So looking forward, we felt very confident about our June numbers because pending sales in in May were so high. And then looking at the data that we'll be getting in the next couple of days, pending sales increased by 22.5%. Not the 60+% we saw the month before, but still pendings is going to tell you where sales are headed. So what you see here is just a big bounce back in housing once the regulations were lifted, and you've had a huge adaptation of technology in the real estate industry. And we've been kind of tracking this with, using Zoom calls with clients and using virtual staging and doing virtual tours and all of the tools that have been available for quite some time, right, all of a sudden became not an option, but a necessity. Yeah. And that, I think, has been a huge facilitator and
I think that's
well.
Really good news for the economy overall. It's so convenient. And the funny thing is, none of this technology is new. It's been here for many years. I mean, people have been making Skype calls for many, many years.
Right.
And WebEx was around, I think, 20 years ago, but now everybody's been forced to adopt it. So necessity is the mother of invention. And it's great news because there's a certain amount of creative destruction going on in all these old, inconvenient, it's making things a lot more frictionless. And I think that's good for the economy. It's going to increase the velocity of transactions, velocity of money in many industries. I'm looking for a new car now, and I haven't even been to a dealership. It's great. They're doing showcases where they give you these really detailed online tours via Zoom. It's incredible. It's really convenient. A lot of apartment leasing offices are really adopting this technology really nicely. So it's good.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any going back, and certainly the younger generations are so comfortable in a virtual world, and this is just kind of force the oldsters to get with the program. So a couple of I think I've indicated caution going forward. About 40% of our members last month said they were noticing a slowdown in activity. And again, this was correlated with the kind of resurgence of cases. So the price side is a whole nother story. As I mentioned, we were at a historic high median home price in June. The specific number was $626,170, 6.5% up from May, and 2.5% up on a year-over-year basis. So that has been really incredible. And as we look at it across all price categories in the state, every price category, is seeing a gain, and the biggest gains are at what I would call the top 20% of the market. And most of the pain of job losses is hitting people that are not homeowners, right? It's hitting renters more because they're in the service industries, which are lower paid. It's really the white collar, and you can see that in these statistics that they are the ones that really are the lucky ones in all this, right, that are able to take advantage if they need a mortgage and really.
I think society needs to reevaluate, and this is just something that happens kind of slowly, but reevaluate the amount of pay people get that do food service and grocery stores. I mean, why are these people so underpaid? It's kind of strange because these are the people that, as we've realized, society has depended on. I mean,
they are the essential workers, right?
These are the essential workers. These are the heroes. Of course, the healthcare workers too, but they're mostly paid pretty well. But the people at the grocery store and the people making your food at a restaurant, and it's probably takeout food. Why are they so underpaid? I mean, it's just kind of strange how that sort of came about that way. I don't understand it sometimes.
Yeah, it's called pricing power.
Yeah, pricing power. Well,
and lack of minimum wages in many areas. So it's something to look at for sure.
It is just as a society, but the skills needed to do those jobs, are not rare, and so that's obviously the reason. The demand is big now, but the skills aren't. They're easily. A lot of people have those skills.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I thought this was really fascinating. This was the weekly survey of our members. And we asked, hey, were the people that you talked to last week, the buyers, expecting prices to go down? And in the initial stages of this, when we started asking this at the end of May, early June, 63%, 67% said, yes, my buyers are expecting to see lower prices. Mm-hmm. And now you get to the first week in August and less than half are. So you've just had a gradual realization that sellers are not with the program in terms of reducing their prices, right? They're not seeing a need to do that in this market. So a gradual, I think, shift in expectations about what's happening with prices on the part of buyers. And
so buyers are feeling a sense of urgency, and they're not expecting any deals.
Well, less than half, fewer are expecting deals today than were 10 weeks ago.
Okay,
but it's just a little bit below half. And 15% of the realtors said they had a buyer who tried to renegotiate a purchase price before the close of escrow. So there's still some of that going on. So here's a look at, you asked me a question earlier about what was normal inventory. And I said that up until 2012, if I took a 30-year average, it would have been between 6 and 7 months. And if you look at this inventory index that, again, goes back 15 years to 2005, you can see starting in the beginning of 2013, the average has been between a 3 and a 4 month supply. So we've just entered a new normal, if you will. And 2.7 is low, but it's nothing we haven't encountered before during this period. And again, I mentioned all of the factors that were growing, but what hasn't grown is new construction, at least in our state. So that's been an issue. And boomers are staying in their homes longer, right? There's a financial incentive. They don't want to pay the capital gains. Gains tax is certainly one of the reasons. Prop 13 is another. But when I started in the 80s, people moved in California about every 7 years. Yeah. And now it's about every 18 years.
Wow.
So just
staggering.
A huge shift. And we're becoming a little bit more like the European model.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Europe has this very stagnant market where there's just not much trading going on.
Well, kids inherit their parents' homes.
Yeah,
right?
And I attributed that, Leslie, to the fact that obviously Prop 13, I think, actually hurts the market in a lot of ways because it makes people stay put, right, to some extent.
Yes, absolutely. Just do the math, right?
Yeah, sure. So Prop 13 is the Howard Jarvis, from I think 1978, the thing that capped property tax increases in the state of California. And so people won't trade their house because they're going to have to pay such a higher tax bill on the new property because of the higher prices. But also, the very low mortgage rates. I think it's kind of another thing that it's not as big because people can always refi. But, sometimes the mortgage rates encourage people to trade houses when they're really cheap because they get an automatic refi when they trade and they get another house that they ostensibly like better. But if those mortgage rates are higher, it really keeps people stuck and makes the market more stagnant because you just don't want to lose that great mortgage you have. And I think that's one of the dangers of these very low interest rates in the long term is that it really causes the market to just be less active. What do you attribute this dramatic rise from 7 to 18 years to? Is it mostly Prop 13 issues or what?
I think it's just doing the math. There's certainly societal factors, right? I mean, 70 is the new 50. People are more active. They don't want to move to Sun City or Leisure World like their parents did and quote unquote retire and sit on a golf cart all day. So they're just more with the mix. But what you find is there's a lot of people who really don't need a 5-bedroom home anymore, but the math just doesn't work out for them. And what we hear over and over again is it's really the capital gains issue. Now we have a proposition on the ballot in California coming up, Prop 19, that'll help people over 55 to move and take their tax basis and so on. So that might help a little bit, but we can't do anything about the fact that people have, huge gains. I mean, if someone's been in their home 30 years in Palo Alto, you can imagine there just is not going to be a way to have it work out in terms of the numbers.
They could always rent it for a couple of years, which will never make sense in Palo Alto, and then do a 1031 exchange. But yes, I totally agree with you. It's really
so. Cool. Anyway, moving on, here's just a look at active listings, which have been declining on a year-over-year basis for the last year. And in June, they were down almost 44% from June of 2019. So that is staggering. I know, right? Yeah. So when you mentioned the need to focus on the supply side, I could not agree more.
So let's talk about that for a moment. So a massive supply shortage. Do you think California, or it's really up to various municipalities, but we've got it. Well, it's not completely, but they've got to loosen up on these building requirements, and maybe make it a little less expensive for builders to build homes, and loosen up on the environmental restrictions. I mean, the Coastal Commission in California, you can't build anything if you can see it from the ocean. It's absolutely crazy. Do you see this happening, or is the state just going to say no? Sorry, tough.
I think it's that, and it's also neighborhood attitudes, which you find over and over again are just simply opposed to anything and everything. And one of the things I'm really proudest of at CAR is a couple of years ago, we created a legal foundation called Californians for Housing. And we are writing letters and then going in and suing cities that essentially are forbidding a project that meets all of the qualifications. And every municipality has housing goals, right? There is a housing requirement that they're supposed to meet, and none of them do. So it's really time to play hardball a little bit and have people understand that this is something that can actually be a huge benefit.
So here's the thing about that. I mean, you would think that the municipalities want the property tax base, right? Because that brings them revenue.
They want the commercial property tax base. They don't want the residential property tax base.
But that's where I was going, Leslie. Because since, nobody's going to build any retail properties anytime soon, and nobody's going to build much office space because COVID has just creative destruction. The home is the center of the universe, as I've been saying. And so, they're just not going to have that. They might have warehouse and distribution centers, but, they're not going to see a bunch of retail construction or office construction, right? Now, also, there is some light in maybe the alternate use of like hotel properties, turning them into residential, and the possibility of even converting offices or shopping malls to residential. I don't know. To me, this is a pretty complicated, expensive venture, but the hotels for low-income housing, turning hotels into little condo units is pretty doable. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I actually have that point at the end of my presentation that could be a real silver silver lining, and even a mall, it could become, a senior housing village or affordable housing village or a homeless village. It's got plenty of parking, and there's going to be more and more of these because people's behavior has changed, and it's been changing for a long time, right? The department store has been an endangered species for decades, but this has really been kind of the end of the line for some of them.
No question. Okay.
So we'll see. Here's kind of looking again at the weekly data. I'll just show here the average daily pendings. It's been going up and down, but going down a little bit lately. And then I wanted to also say there's been some changes that our members have seen that I think are really interesting. So 28% said they had noticed an increase in clients looking for second homes. And again, that's rarefied air, right?
Yeah.
But it's indicative of the kind of work from home opportunity and less density desirability. And then the other one, wait, let me just go back. Yeah. Oh, and then the other was, have you increased interest in selling investment properties? And in the first week in August, about a third of them said yes. So I think that's a whole nother topic about owning rental property in California right now. That is, and the eviction
rent control and everything. Yeah.
Wave. I mean, there's people that are looking to get out. And then just in terms, we talked earlier about utilizing the tools. So over half of the realtors said yes. I'm doing a lot more virtual tours under COVID. In the first month of August, 17% said, I've actually put a buyer into contract who never saw the house.
Right.
And again, that's something we didn't see before. And almost half of them said they had a vacant listing. And in the world of COVID, it's a lot easier to show homes that don't have a homeowner living in them. So we're seeing more of that. So those are just some of the threads that we're following. In terms of the forecast, everybody's got a letter.
You have the square root on there. I've been talking about the square root.
All right, there you go. There's just a lot to talk about here. I've been was originally in the swoosh category, and now I think I'm probably in the W category. But again,
so what she's referring to for those listening, she's referring to the shape of the recovery. Is it going to be a V, a W, a U, a square root, a swoosh, a Nike swoosh?
Right.
So that's what we're talking about. Go ahead.
Right, and then I've just got the forecasts from NAR, Fannie Mae, and MBA that really mirror the trajectory of the GDP forecast that we saw in the very beginning of my presentation, with the big drop in sales on a year-over-year basis in the second quarter, and then recovering after that, okay? And in terms of prices, very little impact. Certainly a bit of a softening, but everything in the low single digits with a delayed impact, right? Prices are typically sticky on the way down until they're not. But here you can see the big hit. And again, the biggest drop was NAR's projection of a drop in the fourth quarter of 3.1%. And then by the middle of 2021, definitely back on track and well above where prices were a year ago. And then this is just a look at where we are with the California Association of Realtors, kind of looking at where we are now to the end of the year, ending up, and I believe I put in the, I didn't put in the chart, but essentially what we're looking at is about a 12% drop in home sales 2020 compared to 2019. And at this point about a 1% drop in the median home price. And we're revising our forecasts every month just because more data is very helpful in a world like this. But I would just say, housing is a leading force coming out of the engineered recession this time around. And we've seen that the last couple months. And while the future looks a little bit choppy based on how we do with the virus, I think the housing market is just ready to run. And then I'll close with just a couple comments about what I think the future is going to look like. And just noting, and we've talked about this, the work from home, work from anywhere new order, I think is going to be huge for housing, right? Mm-hmm. It's not only what type of house do I want to live in, and how many of these white collar workers are now looking at needing not just one home office, but two home, two home
or three. What about the kids? The kids need.
Well, there you go. You need a house isn't just a house anymore. It's where you work out. It's your restaurant. And one thing we didn't really talk about was how many more houses are multi-generational, right? Thinking twice about putting your parents in assisted
nursing
living
home where they're going to die. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So this was a really funny exercise that someone initiated on Twitter a month or two ago, asking people to post a picture of their home office. And for anyone who's listening, I have 6 pictures that show a laptop on top of a washing machine, a laptop in a closet alcove, a laptop at the end of a loft that's about 3 feet wide, a laptop in a kid's room, and at the kitchen table, and on a trash can outside. In other words, there were a lot of people that simply don't have the type of home that makes working from home easy to do, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the winners coming out of this will be, and as I've already said, residential real estate, absolutely. The tech-enabled agent has a huge advantage, and the good news is there are a lot more tech-enabled agents today than there were 6 months ago. An agent who is able to leverage technology to enrich relationships with clients, and the transition of commercial and retail, and as you mentioned, hospitality spaces into housing. So those would be the 4 kind of closing points I would make kind of looking forward.
Good stuff. So Leslie, I have to ask you, thank you for that, by the way. I have to ask you, when we look at what's coming though, we still have definitely some clouds on the horizon, right? I mean, we've got forbearance, we've got foreclosure moratoriums, we've got eviction moratoriums. I mean, are these chickens going to come home to roost here at some point? Because the economy is definitely, it's very uneven. Okay, it's very uneven. Some people, like you said, doing great. Some people really suffering. It's very sad and uneven in a lot of ways. What about next year or the year after? I mean, I don't know. From looking at this kind of stuff, it would seem like we're all in the clear for a long time to come, but maybe not.
No, I mean, it really, I think all comes down to the kind of relief that the government is going to grant to the unemployed over the next 6 months or however long the economy remains essentially paused. And that it all depends on that. When you look backwards, I would say the government did an amazing job of getting relief out quickly. And were there people that got PPP loans that shouldn't have? Of course. Are there people that are getting more in unemployment than they did when they were working? Yes. But, the general tenor of what was done was to support the economy when it was shutting down by providing people with an income necessary to pay their rent and eat. And that's what was done. And it was fabulous. And it's one of the reasons why we haven't seen these things that you're talking about, coupled with the eviction moratoria and so on. going forward from today, I don't know. I think there will be some type of relief, but how long can that go? Half of the rental properties are owned by small landlords that also have mortgages to pay. So there's a lot of levels to this, and it certainly is the thing that's keeping me up at night. And I think we're all watching the monthly CoreLogic data to just see how many people are 90 days behind, how many people are 30 days behind. Now, I'm not sure what the exact number is. I think about a third of the people that got forbearance are still paying on their mortgages. Many, they took it out as an insurance policy. But that's the data I think we need to keep a really big tabs on, because we know from the Great Recession how quickly this can shift when people start losing their homes.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Leslie, do you want to share a website or just wrap it up with a closing thought for us?
Yeah, I really appreciate being here today. I'm extremely optimistic about real estate going forward, with a tremendous amount of concern for keeping the economy going long enough that we can just hit the ground running. Our website is car.org, and we do have information there on the market and on the virus, and we just try to keep our members informed and being able to be the best possible advisors to their clients.
Good stuff. Leslie Appleton-Young, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jason.